Today, we got our monthly Hazbin Hotel preview, and I was surprised to find that it was a promo featuring Charlie, as I've been expecting a Lilith preview after first getting Lucifer's redesign and then having last month's big Adam reveal. With that in mind, today we're going to talk about Lilith, her real-life lore, her connections to the Garden of Eden, how she ended up with Lucifer in the show, and why she left Adam, and discuss my theory that in the show, Lilith might also play the part of Eve, a character mysteriously not shown so far and not even really alluded to. My name is Deepcut, hit that subscribe button. If I sound funny, it's only because I have a cold, and thankfully, the rest of this video was pre-recorded. In the Helluverse, Hell is ruled over by various demon royalties with their own separate hierarchies, but at the very top of this is of course Lucifer, who is not a demon, but actually a fallen angel. Just below him in the official power ranking is of course Lilith and their daughter Charlie. Lilith is supposed to be equal in power to Lucifer as far as ruling Hell goes, though not necessarily in terms of the actual physical forces that she could wield, as Lucifer seems to be the source of her power and he could presumably just take that away. Lilith is a demon now, but is known from Jewish myth as the first ever human woman, but through the power of Lucifer appears to have become an immortal demon figure. Together they rule Hell, but it seems a large majority of the controlling of Hell's population is done through the various hierarchies, including not just the royals, but the overlords who rule over the Pride Ring, many of them being earthborn humans before dying and coming to Hell. The one thing they seem to be rather involved in, however, is the annual extermination, which according to the not always reliable wiki and its outdated livestream sources, Lucifer helps coordinate. Adam was revealed last month to be the leader of the exterminators, which would mean that he and Lucifer are working together to some degree on the extermination of all of the sinners in Hell. I imagine Adam to be like Lilith in that he isn't someone who just died and manifested in the afterlife the same way that all of his descendants would, and instead I believe he has a place in the hierarchy above the other natural-born humans that turn into angels after they die. Now, most of you are familiar with the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and it's really interesting that Eve isn't someone we've seen yet, especially since Adam was introduced with a second-in-command named Lut. In the story of the Garden of Eden, God makes Adam from dust and tries to have him find a partner with any of the animals, but Adam does not find one. So God creates Eve from Adam's side, or in some translations, from his rib. This all seems perfect until the serpent comes in and begins asking Eve about the tree from which they are not allowed to eat, a tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent, of course, convinces Eve to eat the fruit, as does Adam, and now having the knowledge of good and evil, they are kicked out of the Garden of Paradise. Now, the serpent was not known to be Satan, Lucifer, or a devil figure in its time, but rather the serpent and Lucifer were part of the same pattern of mythology about some sort of higher being enlightening humanity. Sometimes it's to help humans, such as with Prometheus, and others it's to hurt them, as implied with the serpent. Though even when helping humans, this figure is often punished by higher gods, such as Prometheus's fate to have his liver eaten every day by an eagle before it regrows again. The serpent, likewise, was punished by having his limbs removed, and was to be trapped in an eternal battle with Eve's descendants. In later Christian thought, the serpent was of course associated with Satan and the devil, and was thought of as being cast into a pit of hell. Satan and Lucifer are separate characters in Hazbin Hotel as far as we know, with Satan being the prince of the Wrath Ring, though we haven't actually seen him in person yet. Regardless of Satan's role in the series, Lucifer is presented as the central devil figure, the king of all of Hell, and is even associated with the serpent, such as we can see the one wrapped around his crown in the recent character redesign. He's also tied into the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil with his apple imagery, a common symbol for it in the West, despite it not being the original fruit alluded to in the Book of Genesis. All of this makes sense with Lucifer's name meaning light bearer, and the term often being associated with the giving of knowledge to humans, whether good or bad. Lucifer has just become the most popular name to describe these various figures, as they all stem somewhat from the same central concept, something now described as the Lucifer tradition, which can even include characters thought up with no relation to the name Lucifer, but just share thematic similarities with it. Lilith is a legendary figure that was not mentioned in the Garden of Eden narrative, and is instead said to be part of the oral tradition that dates back to before the Book of Genesis was even written. There are various stories about her, but for this video, the important aspects are that she was actually created alongside Adam from the exact same dust as him, and despite this, she was still expected to be subservient to Adam, and she absolutely refused. Because of this, she was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Eve was then made from Adam's side in an attempt to create a woman who has to be subservient to him.
In some legends, Lilith is said to be the mother of all demons by sleeping with a fallen angel, such as Samael, though again, Lucifer takes that role here in Hazbin Hotel the same way he does as the central devil figure. In previous videos, I had theorized that Lilith and Lucifer may have teamed up after Lilith was expelled from Eden and sneaked in as the serpent to trick Eve. This would cause the fall of humanity from its perfect state and for Adam and Eve to get the same punishment that Lilith had. Lilith would go on to rule Hell, which is where evil souls naturally manifest, and Adam and Eve are forced to watch as the bulk of their descendants fell to Hell and became the worst versions of themselves. Lilith would become the queen of Hell and inherit all the sinner children that she would never get to have as the promised mother of all humans, and twist them into demons with their sinner forms. As much as I like that story, a lot of you are probably realizing by now that the story of Lilith and the story of Eve are somewhat identical. Both are about supposed first women who end up getting liberated in one way or another, expelled from the garden because of it, with both stories being tied into some enlightening evil figure, either the serpent or Samael. My theory here is that Lilith was Adam's first wife, and that there wasn't actually a second wife in the lore of Hazbin Hotel. I believe Lilith will be revealed to have had children with Adam first, and then later ran off to be with Lucifer, abandoning her human family to start a demon family. While this is one of my more far out there theories, the idea really flips the narrative on its head. Suddenly the sinners are Lilith's long lost children, and Hell is the place where she lets them roam free and do whatever they desire, the same way she wanted to run off and do whatever she desired instead of being subservient to Adam. Lilith and Lucifer both seem content to let the sinners do whatever they want, with very little laws in place to stop them from getting into the worst of vices. With this theory in mind, Lilith and Lucifer don't want to enslave their own people, but rather see it as the unfortunate consequence of just letting your kids do whatever they want, with hierarchies quickly forming based off of who has the most power, who started something early enough to make sure no one else could ever compete with them. Lucifer appears to spend all of his time on passion projects like Lulu World, his theme park that Lululand in the Greed Ring was modeled after. Lilith, meanwhile, is a famous pop star in Hell, essentially the most famous as the queen of all of Hell, with there being posters in the background of the show advertising her performances. These two figures are just chasing fantasy and whimsy, while the worst of the worst happens to the humans around them, not even being available for the one girl we know to be both their daughter, Charlie, when she reaches out. But what do you guys think? Is this one way too far out there, or is there a possibility VivziePop is switching up the lore here in a fun way? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.